Here is our roadmap for today. 1. Assessing U.S. deterrence measures. 2. The regime's strategic objectives. 3. Global powers, China and Russia. And 4. The geopolitical stakes. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Assessing U.S. deterrence measures. So this quote from Mike Pompeo really establishes the baseline of his entire assessment. He points directly to the pressure applied by the previous administration, noting some pretty significant accomplishments in degrading Iran's infrastructure. We aren't just talking about diplomatic maneuvering here. The assessment highlights very tangible reductions in their capacity to enrich uranium alongside deep economic harm. According to his analysis, this is the starting point of our current strategic reality. Breaking down those specific measures, the assessment basically outlines a multi-pronged approach: reducing uranium enrichment capacity, dismantling significant ballistic missile components, and heavily harming the economy to apply severe pressure. According to this report, the military and economic damage inflicted actually caused setbacks that are essentially unrecoverable for the Iranians in the short term. It represents a real measurable degradation of their strategic assets. Section 2. The regime's strategic objectives. How does the assessment actually characterize the fundamental nature of the regime? Well, Pompeo uses a very specific word here: incorrigible, meaning incapable of being corrected, improved, or reformed. The report warns that regardless of any diplomatic overtures or new agreements, the underlying intent of the regime remains entirely unchanged. Their core objective, it argues, is absolutely not reform, it is the restoration of power. The assessment outlines what it calls a cyclical historical playbook utilized by the regime, and it breaks down into 3 strategic steps. Step 1 is to use international agreements to secure financial and blockade relief. Step 2, with those blockades lifted, resume selling oil to restore depleted capital. And step 3 is the kicker. They funnel those newly acquired resources directly back into rebuilding the exact same nuclear and missile programs that were previously dismantled. It's described as a highly calculated play for time and resources. Now, understanding the regime really requires looking at this fascinating internal contradiction. On one hand, you've got fractured internal voices, right? Multiple, competing, and totally disjointed factions arguing internally. But juxtapose that against their unified stance. Because despite all that political fracturing, the assessment notes absolute agreement across all factions on one overarching goal: the ideological belief that the United States and Israel should be wiped out. So the internal politics are messy, but the external hostility completely unified. Section 3. Global powers, China and Russia. Which brings us to a really critical question. Despite suffering severe damage to their military programs and their economy, why is Iran approaching negotiations with such noticeable confidence? The assessment points to what it calls the confidence factor. It suggests this strength isn't actually coming from within, but is artificially provided by foreign powers who are helping them outlast the pressure. Let's take a look at who is reportedly providing this backing. The assessment maps out some very specific material and strategic assistance. It claims the Chinese Communist Party is providing critical electronics for Iran's nuclear and missile programs, and even helping to rebuild air defense systems. Meanwhile, Russia is reportedly providing vital geopolitical backing. So according to the report, Iran isn't just standing alone here. They're being actively propped up by major global adversaries of the United States. Section 4. The geopolitical stakes. All of this builds to the ultimate strategic risk identified in the assessment, which can be summarized in one phrase: when survival equals victory. In this high-stakes standoff, the United States aims for a definitive victory, right? Decimating, threatening capabilities. But for Iran, the assessment argues that victory looks completely different. They don't actually need to defeat the US militarily. If they can just hang on, outlast the pressure, and survive, they're going to perceive that as a monumental win. And this dynamic creates a highly dangerous geopolitical ripple effect. Step 1, the United States fails to achieve a perceived definitive victory over Iran's ambitions. Step 2, the Iranian regime survives and claims a victory of endurance, which leads directly to Step 3. The global actors backing them, specifically the Chinese Communist Party and Russia, become massively emboldened on the world stage, realizing that US pressure can actually be outlasted if they help out. Which leaves us with an incredibly high-stakes question to ponder. If the bar for defeating US deterrence is lowered so much that adversarial powers perceive mere survival as a victory, what happens to the future of global security? How are other hostile regimes going to calculate their own risks moving forward? Because every single action or inaction reshapes the balance of international power.